These craft beers are a staple in American supermarkets and liquor stores. But did you know they might never have existed if it weren't for a bill signed by former president and former peanut farmer Jimmy Carter?
President Carter is remembered in relation to peanuts, but it would be very fair to think about beer when you think about Carter as well.
When President Carter signed his law, I do remember there was a lot of jubilation. The industry was just starting to come together to support homebrew shops and home brewing.
The bill that Carter signed into law in 1978 legalized homebrewing and jump-started the American craft brew industry. Today, the big brewers still dominate the beer market, but craft beer makes up 13.1% of the total market. Since 1990, the vast majority of new breweries have been craft breweries, whereas the number of non-craft brewers has seen little growth. But long before Carter launched the craft beer boom that we know today, the legacy of Prohibition loomed large over American beer.
When Prohibition was repealed in 1933, the federal government looked back to how it had regulated home alcohol production prior to Prohibition. Because there had been no previous specific mention of beer, they made no specific mention of beer when they were repealing Prohibition, so homebrewing essentially remained illegal.
Open a Budweiser and pour yourself the most inviting glass of...
The beer industry that emerged post-Prohibition was dominated by the biggest brewers pre-Prohibition.
The breweries that had really been able to survive were the very big breweries. Breweries like Anheuser-Busch, Schlitz, Pabst, and Coors. But the breweries that had really fallen away were the smaller breweries, the ones that served very local customers, the ones who had been guardians of ethnic and regional diversity.
The year before Prohibition started in 1919, there were 669 brewers. Then, the year following its repeal in 1933, that number fell to 331. And fast forward to the end of the 1970s, and years of consolidation reduced the number of American brewers even further.
The 5 largest breweries in the country produce nearly 75% of the volume of American beer.
It's no city beer. It's cool.
Fewer brewers translated into a mostly homogeneous beer market. In the 1970s, a typical American beer, or an adjunct light lager, was a mild, easy-drinking, low-alcohol beverage. Popular brands include Budweiser, Miller, and Coors. The roots of American craft beer started to emerge in the 1960s and 70s, when homebrewers began homebrewing underground. Homebrewers were interested in what was then less well-known European varieties, like IPAs, pale ales, porters, stouts, and others. One of these homebrewers was Ken Grossman, the founder of Sierra Nevada Brewing Company.
I started homebrewing when I was about 15 years old. Well, I hid it away in my closet for some time, so it wasn't widely known. And then when I was exposed, I was saying I was doing it as an experiment. I wasn't drinking it. It was technically illegal to make beer at home. It wasn't illegal to sell malt and hops and yeast.
Everything changed in 1978 when then-President Jimmy Carter signed H.R. 1337, a law that lifted 50 years of prohibition regulations on homebrewing that had made the craft illegal.
Carter signing the resolution at this point in time when resources were really becoming available to small brewers who were eager and excited to make beer in a new way. I think the timing is really important.
The roots of craft brewing is homebrewing, and I think it was right about the same time that I was planning on opening a brewery that the law got passed. So it certainly showed that the future was probably going to be more interesting for homebrewing due to the wider availability of ingredients and knowledge.
The new law created an exemption from taxation of beer brewed at home for personal or family use. H.R. 1337 permitted adults to brew up to 100 gallons per person, or 200 gallons per household annually.
Currently, the American Homebrewers Association estimates that more than 90% of craft brewers began as homebrewers. And so it's intuitive that an environment in which homebrewing is legal and common is going to enable the creation of small businesses of craft breweries. There's a clear tie between the two, and I would say that that certainly craft beer and the way it looks today with nearly 10,000 breweries, it would not be possible without homebrewing, without homebrewers.
At the time, President Carter seemed an unlikely ally to homebrewers. Known for mostly abstaining from alcohol while in office, Carter limited liquor in the White House during his term.
I have tried Billy beer. Somewhere I have some cans of Billy beer around, and it was a bit of a novelty.
Carter's closest connection to booze was probably his brother Bill's short-lived beer brand, Billy Beer. Originally promoted by Billy Carter back in 1977, the Billy Beer brand was relaunched in 2019 for the modern market as a craft beer.
This is Billy Beer, America's light craft beer.
I mean, the U.S. sort of used to be the laughingstock of beer. If you were a European and you came to the U.S. and drank an American light lager beer in the 50s or 60s, you didn't really think a lot of American beer as far as having character, and then craft brewing really changed that whole dynamic.
We know that we would not have craft brewing without home brewing. We would not have home brewing without its legalization. I think Carter's role was incredibly important and instrumental in this.
So next time you enjoy a craft beer, you can raise a glass to Jimmy Carter.
So this is the very first batch of beer we brewed in the brewery. They call it 1979 Stout.